I don't want to bring you down on a Friday, but I do want to tell you what's going on in public schools now. And about 40% of their schools have adopted the new sex ed standards, and they are crazy. Tina Deskovich is with us. She's the co-founder of Moms for Liberty at momsforliberty.org. Hi, Tina. How are you?
I'm doing well, Glenn. How about yourself?
Well, I could be better. The standards that are now coming into place, the second edition 2020 standards, are introducing all kinds of things at a very young age. If I'm not mistaken, third graders learn about hormone blockers where they can stop their progression into, a boy or a girl, right?
Yeah, that is correct. So starting in third grade, not just the hormone blockers, but they really dig into gender identity. They go in and explain all the different genders and what each one is. I'm not sure as adults, a lot of us have even grasped what that is. So I guess they think 8-year-olds need to really identify and understand all the genders.
That is, what are we doing? What are we doing? So they go through that. Sixth graders have to be able to define oral sex. They talk about sex in graphic detail starting in sixth grade. And a lot of these things that are now being put in, the parents are out of the scene. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't part of the curriculum teach the kids that their parents can't even tell them, what's right and wrong about their sexuality?
Yeah, there are places in the country where that's starting in pre-K, where they're talking to children about your sexual identity and how no one can tell you. They use it in much simpler terms in pre-K. They say, you can be a boy or a girl or both or nothing in between, and no one can tell you, what you are, only you know. And so it's starting very, very young. And then when you read the standards through each grade level, they just reinforce in broader language as they get older. And what we're seeing around the country, and specifically here in Florida where I am, parents are coming forward that policies are now being created within school districts that literally say, do not notify parents when the child comes to school, has been a girl her whole life. In sixth grade, she decides she wants to be he, him. She wants to take on a boy name. They start counseling the child. The parents are not notified, and the policy says that. And parents are not aware this is happening. We have moms 6 months later that are finding this out, and they're devastated. It's really dividing families, putting a wedge between parents and children, and just stealing parental rights.
So this is crazy. By the way, the new national sex ed standards are, quote, devoted to social, racial, and reproductive justice and equity, intersectionality, and language inclusivity. They remove the term girl completely, and the term boy is only mentioned one time. How's that possible?
Oh, Glenn, what is happening to our country? Sex education, as I was reading up on it, kind of was introduced the late 30s. It wasn't in schools until the late 70s, and it really was brought in family and life studies, right? The basics, reproductive. I don't know about when you were in school, but it literally was a film strip you turned.
Right, it was science.
The egg in the tube, right?
Correct.
Learned how it was how baby was created. This stuff that was approved in 2020 and being adopted all over the country is a whole nother level of just invasive into families, into morality, and it's just despicable.
Okay, so let me just give you, starting in sixth grade, an age group of 11 and 12-year-olds, by the end of the eighth grade and 13, the students need to be able to identify and define oral sex, anal sex, and vaginal sex. Starting in the sixth grade, students are taught about abortion, and not in a horrific way, but just as this is an option when faced with pregnancy. And teachers now have to provide information about local abortion clinics to students in ninth grade and up.
Yeah, and it goes on that the schools have to provide credible doctors for them to visit when there's issues. Not doctors that the parents have selected or researched or chosen, but doctors that school districts have selected and chosen, which again, an invasion on parental rights. That's what we focus on at Moms for Liberty, is protecting and defending parental rights and getting parents involved to stand up for those. And so that's our biggest concern, is that parents have been cut out of this completely.
So what do we do when you go to the school board? What do you ask for? Because they're going to be slippery again. No, we're not teaching any of that stuff. Do you go in and say, have you adopted the 2020 second edition standard of the National Sex Education Program?
Yes, I would ask that direct question. I would do a public records request, whatever it's called in your state, to request to see what your child is learning. If you can get it for every grade level, that would be great. But the problem runs deeper, Glenn, and I think it needs to be addressed on the school board level. As you might know, our organization, we're launching chapter level all over the country, and our goal is to be the watchdogs of these school boards and show up at every single school board meeting from now to the end of time. But we also need to be watching at the state level. The stats there are kind of surprising. Only 5 states require parental consent before a child can receive this instruction. So 5 out of our 50 states. 25 states at least require the district to notify parents that there is some sort of sex ed being taught. And honestly, what does that look like when it comes home in a backpack? It's usually buried in a stack of papers that say this year your kid's going to be taught, sex ed. And you're like, and you think about the film strip you saw right, when you were a kid. And you're like, oh, okay, great, no problem. That is not what this is. And then 36 states allow parents to opt out of sex ed, which is really great, except some of those are set to expire. So parents need to be paying attention to their state laws and get involved on that level too.
Okay, I would like to talk to you more about this, in the coming days. We're out of time today, but I would like to talk to you more about it, because I think this is as shocking as CRT is. And if we allow this to be taught to our kids, it's on our own head. And if you say, I can't homeschool my kid, I can't take my kid out of school, then you have to be at every school board member meeting. You have to be there, and you have to ask these questions. Again, you want to ask your school district, and school board and state, are our students now using the second edition 2020 standards for national sex education?
Absolutely, and they can look on momsforliberty.org to join their local chapter. Our chapters will be taking this on, so you personally don't have to be at every single school board meeting, but someone from our organization will be, because that is their goal, and they work and they collaborate, and you need to make it to the monthly meetings so that they can go over and show you what's being taught in your children's school.
So good. momsforliberty.org, momsforliberty.org. Thank you, Tina, so much. God bless.
Thank you, Glenn.